Pamela Harriman's story, woven with love affairs, political alliances, heartbreak, and triumph, defies simple categorization. To understand this woman, we first need to picture the world she was born into. In 1920, Hollywood was just transitioning from an exciting novelty to a cultural juggernaut. Silent film stars like Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks reigned supreme, and directors like D.W. Griffith were experimenting with film as art. Europe was emerging from the horrors of World War I, its aristocracy battered but not yet obsolete. In certain grand country houses, the old social order clung to its traditions. Tweeds, hunting parties, and strict rules about how ladies and gentlemen should behave. England's upper crust still believed in the unspoken codes of class duty, primogeniture, and discreet liaisons behind closed doors. The suffrage movement had secured voting rights for many women in Britain, yet the notion of a woman wielding open political power remained unimaginable to most. Against this backdrop, Pamela Beryl Digby entered the world as the daughter of Edward Kenelm Digby, the 11th Baron Digby, and his wife Constance Pamela Alice Bruce. Pamela grew up on a lush Dorset estate Minturn house, surrounded by meticulously tended gardens, portraits of ancestors, and the quiet hum of centuries-old lineage. In that genteel environment, Pamela learned the art of entertaining without even realizing it. From an early age, she observed how her mother orchestrated dinner parties, where laughter, music, and conversation flowed in carefully orchestrated harmony. While many little girls from aristocratic families were drilled in piano or taught to embroider, Pamela's greatest talent proved to be her ability to captivate a room. She was quick-witted, vivacious, and had a knack for making others feel seen. The young men who visited the estate described her as deliciously bold, though not necessarily in a scandalous sense. Rather, she showed a confidence unusual for a girl of her generation. She adored horseback riding and dancing, disliked dusty rules of decorum, and yearned for something beyond the quiet English countryside. That yearning would become a lifelong theme. By the late 1930s, the world was darkening. Nazi Germany's aggression alarmed Europe. In Britain, Winston Churchill, though not yet Prime Minister, warned of a gathering storm. And across the Atlantic, Hollywood, now a talking picture industry, soared in influence. Stars like Clark Gable and Carole Lombard enthralled audiences seeking an escape from political uncertainty. Pamela, barely out of her teens, caught the eye of Randolph Churchill, Winston's only son. The pair's whirlwind romance led to marriage in 1939, just as war erupted. For the rest of her life, Pamela would be known in certain circles as Churchill's daughter-in-law, though the union itself was short-lived. One seldom heard anecdote from this time hints at the complexities of her relationship with the Churchill family. In a private letter, uncovered years later, Winston Churchill apparently told a confidant that he found Pamela alarmingly charming, implying both admiration and a guarded sense that she could be a formidable presence. She and Randolph soon had a son, also named Winston, but the marriage quickly strained. Randolph went to war, and Pamela glimpsed the emotional toll of his gambling and drinking. She discovered that her talents, particularly her ability to bring people together, weren't fully appreciated by her husband, who struggled with his own insecurities as Winston Churchill's son. Nonetheless, she grew close to the elder Churchill. There are tales of Winston teaching her about fine champagne, music, and the art of debate. He recognized her intelligence, even if he occasionally disapproved of her more daring social maneuvers. By 1945, once victory was declared in Europe, Pamela sensed her marriage was over. She was bored, neglected, and keenly aware that a world far beyond the constraints of the Churchill name beckoned. The divorce came in 1946. From that point on, Pamela charted her own course, relying on her social gifts and a deep yearning for romance. World War II had rearranged power structures and ushered in a period of opportunity, especially for someone with the nerve and charm to seize it. Veterans returned home as heroes, fortunes changed hands, and the British Empire began its slow retreat from global dominance. Meanwhile, in Hollywood, the Golden Age was in full swing, with studios controlling stars like Bette Davis, Humphrey Bogart, and Ingrid Bergman under ironclad contracts. Though Pamela never ventured into acting, she admired the glitz of Tinseltown and occasionally crossed paths with film producers at glamorous parties in Europe. For her, the distinction between aristocracy, politics, and show business was often blurred. She moved with remarkable ease between all three worlds. One of her first major relationships after Randolph was with the American broadcaster Edward R. Murrow's producer. In any case, rumors of a liaison with a powerful man from across the Atlantic added to her mystique. She then famously became involved with Averell Harriman, an older, sophisticated U.S. diplomat and businessman who had played a key role in the Lend-Lease program during the war. They parted ways after a short affair, but he would return to her life in the most surprising way later on. Pamela's personal life took another turn when she married the movie producer Leland Hayward in 1960. Hayward was a big name in Hollywood. He'd managed stars like Fred Astaire and James Stewart and produced Broadway hits including South Pacific. This union thrust Pamela into a world of intense showbiz connections. She mingled with the likes of Rogers and Hammerstein, movie moguls, and starlets who were fixtures in tabloids. Some saw her as an English rose who'd found a new garden in which to bloom, Hollywood's high society. Others whispered that she was climbing from one wealthy man to another, harnessing her wit and charm to secure her fortunes. For Pamela, it was never quite so transactional. She genuinely loved glamour, creativity, and the spark that accompanied ambitious men. If she was also securing her future, well, that was part of the game everyone played, but few admitted as boldly as she did. Hayward introduced Pamela to the behind-the-scenes side of Hollywood. She observed how deals were made over late-night dinners, how reputations could soar or crumble based on a single film, and how the press shaped narratives about the rich and famous. Later in her life, she would draw on these lessons about influence and perception to become a force in the Democratic Party. Yet the union with Hayward was not without its strains. He too had a turbulent romantic history and a controlling streak that clashed with Pamela's independence. Still, their marriage lasted until Hayward's death in 1971. Pamela was at his side in his final weeks, ensuring he was cared for, and, some sources suggest, making sure certain studio deals were tidied up in his name. She had evolved from a bright-eyed socialite into a formidable figure who understood money, media, and connections deeply. That same year, with startling swiftness, Pamela reconnected with her old flame, Averell Harriman. He was now in his 70s, a former governor of New York and one of the elder statesmen of the Democratic Party. Most people were stunned that the pair decided to marry, including Harriman's own family, who eyed Pamela with suspicion. She was younger, vivacious, and had a track record of moving through high-profile relationships. Some critics labeled her a manipulative gold digger, an insult that would dog her in the press. But Harriman was smitten. He respected Pamela's social cunning, admired her intelligence, and believed she could help him shape his political legacy. Their marriage was indeed a merger of equals in many ways. Harriman provided financial security and political clout, while Pamela offered a social brilliance that expanded his circle exponentially. In Washington, They hosted dinners that rivaled anything in Hollywood for star power. Politicians, foreign dignitaries, celebrities, and aristocrats all mingling in a single evening. One rarely discussed anecdote from these lavish Harriman dinners: Pamela supposedly kept a carefully curated index of guest preferences. Everything from favorite cocktails to conversation topics to personal grudges. She studied these notes before each event, ensuring that each guest felt uniquely valued. Henry Kissinger, a frequent attendee, reportedly marveled at how Pamela could juggle 15 conversations at once, bridging personal rivalries with a warm laugh or a deft change of subject. This was her art form. She'd harnessed the social training from her aristocratic upbringing and the star-struck synergy of Hollywood to create a powerful new role for herself as a political hostess. The result was a gravitational pull that politicians found hard to resist. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Pamela grew increasingly influential within the Democratic Party. She raised funds, connected candidates to big donors, and leveraged her Rolodex like a maestro. While her name never appeared on a film's marquee or a law's sponsor list, her behind-the-scenes impact was enormous. In a sense, she combined the best of Tinseltown's promotional flair and British high society's discreet networking to become an indispensable figure for anyone seeking power on the national stage. In 1986, she faced heartbreak again with the death of Averell Harriman, but by then she had become a recognized force of her own. Following Harriman's passing, Pamela inherited a significant portion of his estate, though conflicts with Harriman's children ensued. They'd never approved of the match and contested certain aspects of the will. Pamela, undaunted, pressed on. She reinvented herself once more, this time as a leading Democratic fundraiser and kingmaker. She had her share of critics who claimed she traded on her late husband's name and resources. But the results spoke for themselves. She was largely credited with helping key Democrats win office, thanks to her well-connected dinners and unstoppable fundraising galas. Pamela's crowning achievement came under President Bill Clinton's administration. Impressed by her unwavering loyalty and fundraising prowess, Clinton appointed her U.S. ambassador to France in 1993. This stunned many pundits, some of whom saw it as a purely ceremonial position awarded to a wealthy donor. But Pamela took the post seriously. Fluent in French, she relished the chance to represent the United States in the country she adored. She hosted cultural events, welcomed American artists to Paris, and smoothed diplomatic wrinkles with the same personal touch that had once fueled her dinner parties. Staffers recalled how she insisted on small details: fresh flowers, careful seating charts, and impeccable hospitality, because she believed diplomacy was built on personal warmth as much as policy briefs. In a lesser-known instance, revealed in an unpublished staff diary, she intervened personally to rescue an American student who had run afoul of French authorities over visa issues. When lower-level officials hesitated, Pamela stepped in, citing her personal relationship with a high-ranking French minister. Within hours, the student's crisis was resolved, and Pamela had once again showcased her signature approach. Behind the glamour and ambition, there was a genuine readiness to lend a helping hand. She told the staffer afterward, "Never forget that people matter more than protocol." It was a statement that encapsulated her philosophy: charm, empathy, and direct action, all wrapped together. Yet controversies hounded her too. Political adversaries in the U.S. hinted that she'd bought her ambassadorship, pointing to enormous campaign contributions she'd collected for the Democratic Party. Others revived old gossip about her personal life, painting her as a perpetual seductress. Pamela rarely addressed these rumors directly. Instead, she carried on with her official duties, hosting state dinners in Paris, that dazzled guests with Michelin-starred cuisine, string quartets, and a swirl of the city's elite. She took pride in forging ties between French and American business leaders, artists, and politicians, an extension of what she'd always done best. Her sudden death in 1997 while swimming at the Ritz in Paris sparked an outpouring of tributes. Diplomats praised her skill, politicians lauded her fundraising acumen, and old friends remembered her humor and sparkle, but whispers about her finances continued. She'd allegedly left behind a complex estate, causing speculation about how her wealth was distributed among family members, lovers, and philanthropic causes. Some who had known her from the early days in England, including a distant cousin, suggested that her life's pattern, moving from one powerful man to another, was always about forging strategic alliances. They pointed to diaries and letters believed to detail her often blunt approach to relationships. Yet others insisted that, at heart, Pamela simply believed in living life fully, unafraid of gossip and determined to make a mark. Biographers have debated whether her persona of the greatest courtesan was wholly deserved or a media invention that sold papers. If she was indeed a master manipulator, they argue, why did so many of her ex-partners and friends remain fond of her? Interviews from her staff at the American Embassy reveal a leader who could be demanding, yes, but also fiercely protective of her team. One housekeeper recounted that when the staff needed new uniforms, Pamela personally chose the fabric, insisting on comfort and style for the employees, hardly the hallmark of a scheming aristocrat. Alternatively, critics highlight the fact that she rarely apologized for using her feminine wiles to secure power. In one verified anecdote, she joked at a Washington dinner that a well-set table can open more doors than a crowbar ever could, a quip that some took as a veiled confession of her manipulative talents. In the grander sweep of cultural and Hollywood history, Pamela Harriman's story might seem tangential. She never starred in a film or walked a red carpet at the Oscars. She wasn't a producer or a Broadway sensation, though she married one and befriended many. Yet her life intersects with the essence of Hollywood glamour, the notion that spectacle, charm, and personal magnetism can shape destinies. She applied those traits on a political and diplomatic stage, foreshadowing the modern era where the line between celebrity and policymaker often blurs. Her brilliance in crafting a public persona, utilizing personal connections, and curating events that felt cinematic made her, in some sense, a Hollywood figure in the corridors of power. Her significance also lies in how she reflects the shifting possibilities for women in the 20th century. Born into aristocratic constraints, she ended up as a key player in international politics, transcending the usual roles of wife or mistress to become an ambassador, an official representative of the United States. This is no small leap considering the era she was raised in. She discovered that a woman could leverage beauty and charm, not merely as fleeting assets, but as strategic tools to command resources and shape political outcomes. Whether one applauds or disdains her methods, there's no denying she opened the door for women to exert influence in realms traditionally dominated by men of wealth and authority. Yet her personal life reveals the high cost of living in perpetual high gear. Husbands, lovers, and even her relationship with her only son, Winston Churchill II, bore the strain of her relentless pursuit of significance. She famously quarreled with her son over political alignments and financial matters. In a moment seldom recounted in public interviews, Winston II once confided to a friend that Mother sees the world like a chessboard, and we're all pawns, sometimes lovingly placed, but pawns nonetheless. That remark, if genuine, suggests that behind the polished veneer of a sophisticated hostess stood a mind always calculating the next move, not out of cruelty, but out of a deep-seated fear of irrelevance or stagnation. From her earliest days, Pamela sought the thrill of motion, be it romantic, social, or political, and once she found it, she refused to let go. Another rarely cited event sheds light on her deeper vulnerabilities. In the early 1980s, before she was named ambassador, Pamela was briefly hospitalized for exhaustion and anxiety, though the official line at the time was that it was due to an acute viral infection. A nurse on that ward told a friend she'd never seen anyone so outwardly confident, yet so terrified of solitude. Pamela reportedly insisted the staff keep her door open so she could hear the bustle of the hallway. "Silence," she allegedly said, "makes me feel lost." These small hidden corners of her psyche reveal a woman not merely enthralled by power, but perhaps afraid of what would happen if she ever found herself alone, without a grand project or a circle of admirers. In evaluating Pamela Harriman's broader legacy, we see a figure who bridged worlds. She moved seamlessly between the refined, code-bound British aristocracy, the opportunistic glamour of Hollywood, and the turbulent realm of American politics. She showed that social skills, listening, flattering, aligning interests, could be as decisive in forging alliances as any official policy paper. She also demonstrated how media narratives could pigeonhole a woman as either temptress or saint, ignoring the more nuanced reality that a person could be both ambitious and compassionate, both strategic and genuinely warm. In a private ceremony following her funeral, a small group of friends gathered at a suite in the Paris Ritz to toast her memory with champagne. Among them were ambassadors, business tycoons, and even a retired Hollywood director. They shared stories, Pamela's habit of sending thank you notes within hours of a dinner, her uncanny ability to remember birthdays, her delight in surprising people with a taste of the best caviar or an exquisite vintage wine. They laughed over how she would gently pinch someone's elbow to signal a change of subject if conversation turned awkward. Some wept, recalling moments when she offered genuine solace or career help. It was a final reflection of her life's tapestry, the laughter, the extravagance, the tears, and the inexhaustible swirl of social diplomacy. At the end, someone raised a glass and said simply, "She turned us all into believers. For a night, for a dinner, for a cause. She made us believe in what she believed in. And that, I think, was her genius." Even now, decades later, stories of Pamela Harriman's dauntless parties or discreet negotiations linger in the halls of politics and society. Some see her as a cautionary tale about the moral ambiguities of sleeping your way to the top, an accusation that glosses over her genuine talents and heartbreaks. Others hail her as a role model for women who refuse to be relegated to the edges of power, who see in each introduction the potential for meaningful collaboration. Both views contain kernels of truth. Her life was a labyrinth of alliances and emotional entanglements, but at its core lay a consistent principle: relationships mattered. Whether forging a treaty or planning a fundraising gala, she believed human chemistry could achieve what formal protocols could not. So we reach the end of this saga with a quiet recognition. Pamela Harriman exemplifies the complexity that arises when personal ambition, historical circumstance, and an undeniable gift for connecting with others collide. She left behind no children besides her son Winston Churchill II, no cinematic oeuvre, no signature piece of legislation, yet her legacy endures in the unstoppable phenomenon of fundraising galas, the persistent power of personal influence in politics, and the example of a woman who consistently broke the mold society tried to place her in. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, Let us know your thoughts in the comments section and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.